Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Bike Shed, a podcast from your friends at thoughtbot about developing great software. I'm Sally Hall.
And I'm Aji Slater, and together we're here to share a bit of what we've learned along the way.
So, Aji, what's new in your world?
So I recently got back from Brighton Ruby, a conference that's held here in the UK. It was during a heat wave in the UK, so that was fun. But while at Brighton Ruby, besides all of the wonderful, great things that go along with a conference, and a fantastic talk by a thoughtbotter named Remy about time and some of the lies that people and developers believe about time, I volunteered there and I was running the embassy for Brighton Ruby. And what that means is that I was stamping Ruby passports. Do you know about the Ruby passport?
I don't. I know about the National Parks passport, but that's different.
An equally amazing, great riff on the passport idea. But, and I'm holding mine up now, and I apologize for our audio words
I will
today.
describe it. It looks like a passport. It is burgundy. It says Ruby passport on it and has like a gemstone thing and like fancy looking branches. It looks like a passport.
Yeah, it is a tiny book. They are actually, there's a lot of like production quality that went into making these. They were done by Avo, which is a like Ruby on Rails framework for internal tooling and kind of like, the internal side of your app and that sort of thing. And I think they were made for a Rails world year or two ago, something like that, and they become a real thing at conferences to have like a stamp. I've got stamps for Haggis Ruby and for Brighton Ruby, where you get a stamp at the event, like a stamp or a sticker or something like that, and it's a little bit like a two-sided marketplace sort of situation as well, that the conference will scan a unique QR code for your passport to like check you in at that event. And then when you scan the same QR code, you can connect it to your rubyevents.org profile. And so you'll have a list of the events that you attended. And if you have talks or anything like that, the community has added hundreds of talks to the rubyevents.org site to link to their recordings and kind of index and keep track of all of the different Ruby events that have gone on around the world. And it's such a fun little thing, and being able to introduce people to it. I especially loved stamping the passports because that felt very official. How long will you be at the conference for?
Were you wearing a special hat? I picture this happening with a special hat.
I wasn't wearing a special hat. I should have brought a special hat, but I did not.
It's okay. Your personality is sort of a special hat.
Thank you. Yeah, and so that was so much fun, not only getting to like interface with the community in a different way because of that. And as I said, community, I looked at the front of the passport. Up at the top, it says require community.
It sure does.
Because with the Ruby folks love a good joke and love some silliness. And I feel like that's exactly what the passport is. And yeah, it was so much fun. And I love that that's a thing.
Yeah, that is very fun. I didn't know about that. And it makes me want to consider leaving my house to go to conferences, which is a high bar. It takes a lot for me to want to leave my house to go to a conference.
Yeah, just consider, though.
Yeah,
so.
No commitments yet. Well, I mentioned National Park passports.
Yeah.
Because I was at Yellowstone last week, which is the first U.S. national park.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I should drop when it was created, but I don't remember. But it was Teddy Roosevelt.
It was.
And it was just gorgeous. And like, there's not very much service in the park, which means that I couldn't mess around on my phone, which was also glorious. And it was me and my wife and our two kids who just graduated high school, basically stuck in a rental car for 10 days in the middle of nowhere with no service, which sounds horrible, but it was actually fantastic. It was really fun. We got to see all kinds of wildlife and like just the weirdest geothermal formations. Like it just feels like you're moving from like Star Trek set to Star Wars set to just like name another sci-fi movie with weird Earth things happening. But it's all in one place in the country that I live in, which is insane. But it was so much fun. And I, being who I am, did spend some time scolding people who were not following the rules.
This is like littering and things like that, right? Or
yeah. Like, I honestly don't care if you get in front of me in line in the ice cream store, but don't throw a rock into that geyser. You're going to clog it up. And no
so
bikes
how
on the
geysers work? I don't know.
There's a sign right there. And please stand a lot farther away from that bison. A lot farther away.
Yes.
A lot farther away.
Yes, I know that is an issue, actually, that people, like a couple of people a year, get gored and murdered by bison, basically.
I don't think they die that often.
Oh, that's great.
But
that is much better than it was in my head.
They do get injured fairly often. There is a book called Death in Yellowstone.
Uh-oh.
That is like this person who's a park ranger there for a really long time. And it's just stories of the ways people have died in Yellowstone, broken down into categories like hot springs, animals, getting lost. Yeah. I think there's actually a category about murder, but I haven't read that far in the book.
Mm-hmm. Getting real dark here, real fast on the bike shed today.
Real dark here. But the bison were really cute, and I got to spend time with my family, which was really nice because my kids are leaving for college in like a month.
Yeah, congratulations, kiddos.
Yeah, I'm very proud of them. They don't listen to this. Yeah, it was cool. Really fun.
You got your passport stamped, I assume.
No, I don't actually have a national
park. You don't have a national park passport? Oh, no.
You have to pay for them. And I actually, like halfway through the trip, sprained my ankle pretty badly.
Oh.
So didn't go into many gift shops after that because it wasn't worth the hobbling.
Right. Yeah. Hobble to the nature. Don't worry about the gift shop.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, shout out to the Mammoth Clinic inside Yellowstone. They were so kind and so helpful. Amazing. And it was like the most pleasant I have injured myself and need an x-ray experience I've ever had.
Well, good job, National Parks.
Yeah. Which is actually, it has happened to me many times in multiple countries. So it does mean something that's the best one. I got a sticker and a lollipop.
What?
Yeah.
They know what their job is.
They do. They didn't even try to pretend like they were for kids.
I wanted to throw out a radical idea here of something that we should try and do today. This is actually a listener suggestion to Muppet-cast a software development team. So
I was born to do this.
As was I. I will famously get very intense with friends when they try to Muppet fan cast a movie or a story, and I feel like they're kind of missing the point, or they don't understand the nuance of a Muppet's character. So,
yeah. What kind of full-grown adult doesn't understand the nuance of the Muppets characters? Come on.
Yeah, seriously. I used to use, when interviewing roommates for people coming to like take over a room in a house that I lived in college, would use the question, "Who's your favorite Muppet?" as a kind of indicator. You could say, "I don't know,"
where there's no wrong answer, but just like what you say about why.
Exactly. 100%. Well, the only wrong answer is, "I don't like the Muppets." And then I would just immediately, just in front of them almost, tear out the page of notes that I'd been taking and just show them.
Or handcuff them to a chair and make them watch Muppet Christmas Carol.
Nah, I mean, I don't have time for that. Like, that's no, fair. They're just, there's so much humanity. You've got to find a way to write some of them. No, that's not true. But, so I think what we need to at least establish is, what roles are we kind of filling? And we might not get to all of these, but there is an article on gov.uk of what each role does in a service team. Did I send you this?
You did, but then I closed the window.
Okay. And the roles your team must have, according to gov.uk service manual, the team building a government service needs to have people with the following roles or skills either in the team or available to it. That is product manager, service owner, delivery manager, user researcher, content designer, and developer. And I think that's a good maybe jumping off point. We might quibble around like the naming or categorizing a little bit of these maybe differently than the UK government does, but I think that gives us a good kind of baseline to start from. So we don't have to spend time thinking up what are the roles.
Yeah. Who'd make software? I don't know. I've never done that.
Because even with the defined roles from the folks here at thoughtbot, that's not necessarily always the makeup of the team. We'll go into a client team. They'll have individuals who perform duties and tasks that kind of divide differently than we might do it at thoughtbot. Or if it's completely our team and the participants on the client's side might have kind of different makeups and different skills. Like each team is going to be a little different. And so kind of just having this standard set, I think, was just a neat way to be able to kind of start this ridiculous process we're about to undertake.
I love this. Let's start by reading off what the roles are. Maybe not the whole description, but just a general idea of what they are.
Sure. So first off, we've got here the product manager. We're saying here, and of course we'll include this link in the show notes. Your product manager works with the delivery team to make sure your service fits with your organization's priorities, define goals, make sure the service will meet user needs, prioritize user stories for each work sprint, that sort of thing, and accept user stories when complete.
Okay, that makes sense to me. The next one is a service owner. Service owner has the decision-making authority to deliver on all aspects of a project. So overall responsibility for developing, operating, and continually improving your service, making sure processes are followed, encourage maximum possible take-up of your digital service. I don't know what that means, but I guess it's like adoption. Yeah, user adoption. They're the decider and the pusher. No, that's not right. Encourager.
I think I would more usually or more generally refer to this in like my day-to-day as like the stakeholder.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. I like that.
The next one here is delivery manager. It says the delivery manager is responsible for setting up the agile environment your team needs to build and iterate on your service, removing obstacles or blockers, helping your service team become better at autonomously organizing their own work. Yeah, and that feels like a familiar role as well, right? Like Scrum Master or
Yeah, it feels like Scrum Master to me.
Project Manager or something like that.
Yeah, all right. User Researcher. This is a familiar title to me. So this is the person who plans and executes on research in order to figure out what users who will be using our service need and do and how they'll use it.
Here we have an interesting distinction that I want to read through a little bit here to see between content designer and designer. But a content designer is responsible for the content in your service. They develop content plans and strategies based on user needs, writing clear, usable, and accessible content in this gov.uk in plain English, reviewing content to make sure it's accurate and relevant. Okay, so I see that this is the person that's sort of developing what the
content.
I didn't want to just use content over and over again, but the what, the why, the instructions. Yeah,
if there are wireframes, they're putting the meat in them.
Yeah. I think often on smaller teams, this will fall between like stakeholders and designers, or if there's someone from like the business side or product owner.
I feel like this is the role that tends to be least clearly defined on teams I've been on.
This is true. And
we end up, you'll be in a situation where like, okay, I know that the description of the product goes here, but who on earth writes that? Please don't make me write that. I'm a developer. Mm-hmm. Not that I can't write, but I don't want to describe this product I'm barely familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like sometimes you get in that situation. It's like, oh, just use your best judgment or copy something from this and that. And I will often advocate for someone who, on the product side of the thing to make those decisions, because those content decisions, those writing, that's part of the voice of the product. And
Yeah.
I think someone who is kind of deeply focused on what that means and what that should be is the one that's going to be in the best position to implement that.
So then we have designer, separate from content designer, which this is kind of vague about. Doesn't have the same bullet points as the other ones.
It is actually, yeah.
It's like you might need more than one designer. Start with an interaction designer. We're not going to define that. But I think we've done a lot of experience with designers. We know that they have a broad range of responsibilities. I think, the first naive assumption is that it's like visual design about like colors and making things look pretty, which is certainly a piece of it. But there's also like usability and user flow and interaction designs and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think very often I have experienced designers that really thrive and do the best when they're also part of the responsibility, or take on part of, or are involved in part of the responsibilities of like the user researcher, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Being able to design the experience of a user means that you need to know what's important to a user and sort of the way that they're thinking and approaching your product or your application. A lot of overlap there as well. But the last one is developer and front-end developer, which is interesting to me that the headline is put that way. I think it probably says something about the types of teams that whoever wrote this manual has like participated in, because those aren't necessarily different roles, quote unquote.
It feels to me like saying doctor and female doctor. Front-end developers are developers, and there are lots of kinds of developers.
Yeah, that's a good good point, I think.
Front-end developers for me.
It does, yeah. But developers on your team too, the bullet points we have here are like solve technical problems, continually improve the service with new tools and techniques, write, adapt, and maintain code. So that sort of thing.
And there are a few others listed. We're not going to go into these, but it says you may, depending on your size and complexity, need performance analyst, technical architect, DevOps engineer, business analyst, quality assurers and testers, and technical writers.
I think one that we might want to pull out of there, because it is a pretty frequent addition and usually a very welcome addition to a team when we have the resources to open that role for us, is a QA tester. Someone
absolutely.
whose
I
sole
love a
responsibility
QA person.
Absolutely.
Now I have opened another tab, which is the Wikipedia list of Muppets.
That one just lives rent-free in my brain. It's open at all times.
Absolutely. So I have to say, when we first started talking this, my brain immediately went to, I want Animal doing QA. Which sounds ridiculous, but I don't know. He seems like the master of controlled chaos. Like, one thing that's helpful in a QA person is them thinking like, what are ways that a user will approach this system that are not what we intended? And how does it respond to that? And like, the one thing Animal's going to do is not what you intended.
Right. Absolutely. I think Animal, like his first image you might have on him is just like destroying things or whatever. But as you were describing that, I think another thing that kind of occurred to me about Animal is that he will get on a train of thought and he will just go down that line like as far as you possibly can. And I think that is really useful sometimes for QA, where you have a user that has maybe like found one tool or one thing that has worked for them in their system. And then so they start trying to apply that same situation all the way across the app. And that, again, that's not the intended use of how to do that, but you want to ensure that someone who has a different idea about this thing and is trying to use it a different way than you intended what's going to happen for them. Are things going to break? Are things going to fall apart gracefully or explode in their face? So yeah, absolutely. That is a fantastic first casting. I think.
Thank you. We're just going to assume that he's also capable of like documentation and communication and all of those other things that a good QA person has.
Well, okay. Well, here's maybe the interesting part of that is that like Animal, I feel like he can't be unleashed without Floyd Mayweather. And so Floyd is the Muppet with the in the Electric Mayhem with the kind of like stringy orange like mustache and beard, and he's kind of always nearby Animal, and he's sort of like the one holding the chains or whatever. And when Animal gets like too wild, Floyd is the one that kind of like brings him back to reality. And so I think maybe it's got to be a QA team. It's Animal and Floyd.
That sounds good. And now I'm like not going to say out loud, but I'm mentally flashing to pairs of QA people I've worked with that are very Animal and Floyd. It's a good combo.
Yeah. There's someone who's maybe a little more unhinged and willing and able to go after those boundaries, and then there's someone that realizes that the breaking isn't just for breaking's sake, and makes sure that it's productive.
Yeah, I like that. All right, tag.
Oh, but you did so well that I don't know if I can live up to any of these. Let's see. Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
All right. Which one did we say was like delivery manager was the one that we said was sort of like a scrum master a little bit, which is a thing I did in my past. And this might sound kind of weird, but I want you to go with me on it. I think Miss Piggy.
Okay.
Just
say more.
Removing obstacles or blockers to progress. You know, if someone is preventing Kermit from, being his best version of himself, she's not just going to sit there and let that happen.
That's true.
She is outspoken. She is firm. She can hold up some boundaries. And she can tell people what to do, which isn't explicitly a part of this list, but sometimes a Scrum Master needs to tell someone what to do.
Yeah, that's good. I do like the calling out of removing obstacles, because that just immediately conjures a hi-ya karate chop through whatever is standing in the way. And sometimes that's what needs to happen. And you need your delivery manager to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that person also, sometimes has to sweet talk people on other teams to cooperate with them. And that is something Miss Piggy can do too.
Absolutely. Ooh, yeah, that's good. I think the thing that initially popped up to me was going to be a bad choice. So would have been Scooter, who is the sort of production manager or production assistant on the Muppet Show, but
Wikipedia calls him the stage manager. And there's Muppet Theater.
Yeah, I think I quibble with that a little bit, because I'm not sure Scooter is as effective as I would want a stage manager to be.
That's fair.
And Kermit does a lot of the roles of what I would think of a stage manager doing. So, but yeah, exactly. And so I think that's the easy answer, but I don't think that's actually the person you want doing that role, because I don't think Scooter has a lot of those qualities.
He's not effective enough.
Exactly. Yeah. In the Muppet movie, Scooter is famously not the man with the contacts. He's not the man with the plan. He's the man with the van. And so he's part of the band because he owns the van that gets the band around. And while there is definitely something necessary about that role, it's not the one that you want for your delivery manager. I think Miss Piggy's it.
What's next?
I think I want to talk this one out a little bit, because this is just sort of like a vibes-based choice that I want to know what your thoughts are. As we're going really heavy on the Electric Mayhem here, but user researcher feels like a Janice.
Okay, I'm not as familiar with that. The Electric Mayhem is not my area of Muppet expertise. So tell me more about Janice.
So Janice she's mostly mouth. Her eyes are covered. She's got long blonde hair. Like, yeah, for sure, really.
Oh, yeah, she's got a hat.
Yeah, yeah.
They've all got hats, but yeah.
Because I feel like she's very like down to earth and might be a little bit of an airhead, but I think that's maybe just her go with the flow attitude, actually, and that's not actually the quality of Janice. I feel like she could fit into any situation and get along with and strike up a rapport with anyone in all these kind of disparate walks of life or different users, and might be able to get them to describe what kind of their process or like their frame of mind is. Sometimes that might be because she's not picking up what they're putting down. Other times it might just be because she is reframing in an interesting way, let's say. And I think that could get somebody talking a lot and get somebody feeling really at ease and comfortable to not have to like protect their own pride or something about that, and really kind of get to the nitty gritty of what their experience of your product is.
Are you aiming for user researcher here?
Did I not say what role?
No, you didn't.
Yes. Excellent. There.
Good job. You made your argument without even telling us what it was. Very good.
Because I'm trying to think of what are some of the other qualities that you're going to be looking for in someone that is researcher, kind of conjures ideas of maybe like Bunsen and Beaker, but I don't think they're not.
This is definitely more of a people skills kind of researcher.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So it's someone, and I think sort of the way you were describing Janice would make her suited to what I think is important, which is not assuming anything about your user, or not assuming very much, being clear about what you are assuming, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of having a weird perspective means that you're already going to be open to what the user is doing instead of guiding the user down a path of questions that's only going to get you to the answers you were hoping for.
Right. I feel like she comes in with no preconceived notions.
Yeah. Let's start with, what is a computer, man?
Yeah, and she's gonna have good clarifying questions.
Yeah.
And some might come out of left field, but I think they're gonna get to the like nugget of truth eventually.
Yeah, some of those left field questions can really like turn everything on a head in a way that's really good for the product and the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Coming in with assumptions, like you were saying, and asking questions that only get the answer you want, that's not going to serve the product best because you're too close to it, day-to-day development. That's why you have this role, is to go out there and get a perspective outside of the team that sees it day in and day out in this particular way that you do while you're developing it.
What is Kermit doing? I think it's important that we include him.
I think Kermit is the stakeholder, if he's anything.
Okay.
And I think that is something that folks kind of miss out a lot on when they cast Kermit in a Muppet fan casting, like casting Aragorn and Lord of the Rings is like, well, that's obviously Kermit. And it's like, is that what Kermit's role is? Kermit's kind of the voice of reason. He's the grounded one amongst the Muppets. He is he's the glue that like holds the things together, and he is the one that's able to like
vision.
Which?
The holder of the vision?
The holder of the vision. Yeah, exactly. He's the one that can tell you what the Muppets are and kick off that speech that it's like, we're a family, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Kermit as the stakeholder.
Yeah, he's not the protagonist, but he is the sort of like underlying pulse of the whole crew, right? The one that you can come back to for that source of truth.
Is it developer arrogance to say that the developer is going to be the protagonist?
Well, I guess like, is that saying like, is the developer the human cast in this team? I don't think that there would the users are the human.
No, I like the developer as the human.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's a little bit the least interesting job to write a movie about on his list. It seems like if you were making a movie about a software team, a lot of things would happen to the developer.
I think this might
react to things.
I want to push back on this a little bit because
Please.
I'm wondering if
it doesn't feel good to say this.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like those things you could say about any of the roles, and it might just be not necessarily arrogance, but just sort of like closeness and familiarity.
That's
That
fair.
you're saying that, like, what you're saying there is that any one of these roles could be the human, because I think sometimes there are certainly days where we all look around at the team that we're working with, and you're like, I'm the only human amongst these Muppets.
Yes.
And then there are other days where you think, I am the only Muppet amongst all of these amazing humans.
Okay, so before we choose the human, is Rolf the dog the developer? Because keyboards.
Oh. Okay, now I really want to try and connect why Rolf is the developer.
Okay.
Let's see. Rolf he's very highly skilled in like one particular area. He'll kind of relate everything back to that area, whether that is music or being a dog. He talks a lot about being a dog from time to time. There's a scene in a Muppet Show episode that I really love with I can't remember who off the top of my head, but he's a vaudevillian singer, and he is paired with Ralph to do a duet, and Ralph starts playing all these like flourishing notes and going very over the top, and he says to Ralph, it's like, no, play like you're not getting paid. And he pulls it really back and kind of does then just the minimum, which is the perfect kind of balance to support this song that is going to be sung.
Okay, I love that.
I feel some of the times that is a little bit the development experience. Like you come in and have these like really fun, amazing to implement and like bleeding edge technological ideas, and you need someone to pull it back and be like, whether that's from inside yourself or outside from other members of the team, but it's like, we can actually implement this just super easy with something out of the box. And that feels like for me, an experience that is very true to being a developer.
Absolutely. Sometimes the best solution is kind of the most boring one. And you want to play the fancy one first just to see.
Yeah. I think sometimes that's Ralph's arc too, is to not necessarily settle, but to find fulfillment in the simple thing. Yeah, so I think the keyboard thing was brilliant. I love it so much. But I think you might actually be onto something there. I'm running through other Muppets to see, like, we've got Fozzie, New Zealand.
I don't think Gonzo could be a developer.
No, I think Gonzo actually is, if not the designer, the content designer.
Maybe he does both.
Yeah. Well, I think those two roles are probably working very closely together. But because Gonzo's perspective is going to be like to find the creative thing that hadn't been thought of before, I think where Gonzo might fall down as the designer a little bit is that he doesn't always care about the audience, or he has a very...
Sorry, not at Thoughtbot, obviously, or on any of our wonderful clients.
Right. Where a little bit he's doing it for himself, or just for a very niche audience. He's not necessarily listening to the audience of the Muppet Show when he's designing his performances, but I might be missing the mark a little bit there.
Well, he would then be working very closely with user research.
True.
Janice, he would be collaborating with Janice a lot.
Right. Which, now that you say that, sounds really dangerous.
Well, we got to keep going. We can't fire anybody. There's only forward. There's not back. It's a rule I just made up.
Okay. When I'm out walking with the dogs, we call that the Super Mario. It's like, we don't walk backwards. We only walk forward, because the screen doesn't move back in Mario games. It only moves forward.
That direction.
So we got to Super Mario this. Yeah. Let's see. What are we missing here?
I think we're only missing the product manager.
Okay, product manager.
Or did we do that?
No, we did delivery manager, but product manager. So we're defining goals. We're making sure that it fits user needs, accessible to everyone, prioritizes user stories.
A little bit steering the ship.
Yes.
Why do I want Fozzie Bear to do this?
I was just thinking Fozzie too. What? Yeah, what? Okay.
What about Fozzie makes us both think?
I think because Fozzie's got a positive outlook and actually has goals.
Yeah.
And kind of needs the rest of the team, or not needs for the role description, but Fozzie himself needs the rest of the team to help execute on that.
Yeah, I like this.
And I think the prioritizing user stories, like storytelling, that kind of feels very Fozzie to me. He wants to make sure that the service is accessible to everyone.
Yeah, Fozzie. I'm thinking of when he is, again, A Christmas Story, or the Christmas Carol is the one that the Muppet piece I'm most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays Fozziewig,
Mm-hmm.
And he just wants everybody to enjoy and have a good time.
Right. Yeah, he's throwing the Christmas party.
He wants to make sure everybody is involved.
Yeah, that's so Fozziewig's old rubber chicken factory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and he's got the goal there of like creating joy, and I mean, a little bit he's maybe having the role of the owner in that particular role that he's playing, but I think he fits Fozziewig so well because he's the one with his finger on the pulse of the buyer of said rubber chicken, right?
Yes.
He's the person who loved this product so much he bought the company.
Yeah, right. I agree.
And there may or may not be a little man named Mr. Bibble living in his finger.
I'm not sure I should go down that path. I don't know.
That's you need to watch your Muppet Treasure Island a little bit more. Mr. Bimble lives in his finger.
I think the human in this all is like the C-suite executive team.
Oh, interesting. I just immediately had flashes of the Jason Segel Muppet movie where the C-suite executive is like the villain of the thing. And it's like, well, that makes sense. I can already picture it. It's already been cast.
Yeah. And a little Scrooge.
And does that make the board of directors Staller and Waldorf in the balcony?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. This is perfect. Ship it.
All right. So we've got Fozzie is our product manager.
Yes.
Kermit is our stakeholder, our service owner.
Yes.
The delivery manager.
Miss Piggy.
Yeah. The user researcher is Janice. Our designer is Gonzo.
Yeah.
Developer is Rolf. And our QA is Animal and Floyd. I think the only person that we haven't chosen is the content designer, and I want to say Sam the Eagle.
Yes, I think you're right. Especially in those moments where you kind of need some fluffy content that sounds good.
Yes, right? That sounds like we are changing the world through business.
Innovation.
Right. Yes. Sometimes you just need things that are an inspiration that lead the person in the right direction. And they might not, don't think too hard about it, but it's going to, follow through to the next step in the funnel. And
he'll say the important thing in there too.
Yeah.
We'll get the point across eventually, sort of. It is the American way.
Sam, actually, this is Christmas Carol. So it is the British way. Do you also rewatch that movie every Christmas season?
That is the kickoff of our Christmas season.
Nice. Excellent.
The three most important movies for my family to watch at Christmas time are Muppet Christmas Carol, Die Hard,
yes,
and Christmas Vacation.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen that one in a long time, but that's a good one.
Yeah, with a bonus Emmett Otter's Jug Band
Christmas. Yes, absolutely. Wow. Okay. Well, this has been the most like laughing and fun I've had with one of these episodes in quite some time. So I hope that it's been enjoyable for everyone else out there.
And useful. Now you know who to hire. Just like which one of your candidates is most Rolf? That's your developer.
There you go.
It. Don't think too hard.
I love it.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Let's do it.